Hello, I'm Marcus Grodi. Welcome to the fourth episode of the Science Before Science, a guide to thinking and believing. I'm here with renowned physicist Professor Anthony Rizzi, the director of the Institute for Advanced Physics. He is our guide in firming up the foundations of our thinking. In the previous episodes, we've seen how the deep decay in our culture calls us to return to truth. We found we need both knowledge and belief, as a bird needs two wings to soar. We found that knowledge comes before belief, and that as men, our knowledge comes through the senses.
Yes, and this is true even though not all the knowledge we have is sense knowledge.
Yes, we know things that aren't sensed. For example, I know when I think something. So why do St. Thomas and Aristotle say that all we know comes through the senses?
Yeah, that's a good point, because we would not be thinking something unless we had first got it from something through the senses. So even our knowing that we are thinking is ultimately dependent on the senses.
Let's back up a bit. What is the first thing that we know?
The first thing that we know is that things exist. At some point, for example, when we're in our mother's womb, we would bump up against a placenta in the womb and realize that something's there. As Chesterton said, the first thing we know is that there is and is. Right.
Being is very important. Things exist. Can people really forget that, though?
Yeah, as funny as it sounds, yes. Lack of attention to existence is part of the reason that the movement called existentialism, let me say that word, existentialism, it has existence at the beginning. Existentialism started and had a profound influence because of this. This loss of being, of the understanding of real existence of things outside the mind, this concentration on thinking about thinking was so severe that it led, like extremes do, to its opposite, that is, a swing back to being. This happened in the 1940s, some 65 years ago.
Well, then how do we lose track of reality? Seems incredible that we do this.
Well, we're back to our main culprit, and that's the misunderstanding of science. Along with good, solid modern science is mixed an unhealthy dose of philosophical confusion and error. Science, the head of our culture, the thinking end of our culture, effectively diffuses the philosophical error into each one of us. It made Galileo say that everything is mathematics, that is quantity and motion, and that color, taste, smell, all those are illusions. Believe it or not, he really said that. Through a modern part of physics called quantum mechanics, many people today even think the world is not there until you look at it. One gets stuck in his own mind, not remembering real existence, but concentrating on mental existence only. One can truly say, in that case, that he gets stuck in his own head.
It seems technology has its own part in this. You've mentioned to me in conversation that technologies are like sacramentals of science, which means they communicate the good science as well as any errors mixed with it.
Exactly. There are many ways it does this. I'll bring up one. Because of technology, we have a lot of communication via words and images, as opposed to direct contact with people and things. This instills in us a habit of thinking in terms of symbols and signs. We thus get used to looking past things, the things themselves, and instead think of them for what they stand for, or what we can use them for. This puts the reality of things, and even of people, into the background, and our own thoughts about them into the foreground. This tends to push us into our minds, cutting us off from external reality.
And since you are saying this was already a problem way back in the late 1940s, then it can only be worse now.
Yeah, we live in an information-rich world, trapping many of us in our own minds in a sort of cyberspace. This information-rich world isolates one from concentrating and even from contact with large elements of reality. One icon of this problem is the meat section of a supermarket, which we talked about in the first episode. Remember, we said that meat, the way it's packaged and so forth, doesn't look like dead animals. In fact, many children don't realize that that's what it is until they're much older. We are increasingly becoming disconnected from things as they naturally are. In fact, we are increasingly disconnected from things as they actually are, and connected instead with technology and symbols.
It's as if we look through everything and not at anything. And when we do look at something, it tends to be at ideas in our minds. If everything turns into our own ideas, it's like the ultimate Midas touch.
Everything becomes logically manipulated in our heads, as if we could indefinitely postpone saying anything about what really is. In the meanwhile, we continue to do things using reason as if reason were just a tool for our own material benefit rather than a tool to reach truth. Now, even at that material level, we are in trouble because how can we even decide what's a material benefit and what's not? Material benefit ends up being based on what I think about what others think. But I will confusedly think that it's not their thinking, but my thinking. What a powerful form of mind control.
Yes, it all goes back to our not seeking the truth. Indeed, we tend to think there is no such thing as truth.
We see this in the common saying, that's your opinion, but it's not mine. And at that point, usually no more can be said. It's effectively saying, we cannot know the truth, cannot know things, so let's just get along with each other and then get along with doing our business using them.
So we need to get back to what things are in and of themselves, not as they are in our heads. We need to get back to our senses. Through our senses, we are in contact with things. We are united with things as they are specifically, yet there is more. What more do we know, Dr. Rizzi?
Well, there are two types of knowledge, sensorial knowledge and intellectual. There is both sensorial sight and intellectual sight. So through the senses we get all we know, but the senses are not able to recognize all they pass along to the intellect.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah. Our idea of a circle is more than just any particular circular thing as presented to my eyes. I look at a tire, for example, I see something black and round. I look at the moon and I see something white with marks on it, but it's also round. Yet from such an experience I pull out, or as we say, abstract the idea of a circle.
Isn't that already there in the image I have of the moon, for example, in my mind?
No, because the moon is particular in your image in your mind. And my idea of a circle is general. My image, which comes from my senses, is always particular. It's a particular size and color, whereas my idea of a circle is no particular size. It's any group of points equidistant from a center. No matter how many I draw, my idea of a circle is always greater because it's totally general. Any one I might sense, any circle I might sense, is particular. I could show you a particular circle you'd never seen before, and you would still know it to be a circle, because you have the idea of a circle. That's how powerful an idea is.
So the intellect presents things in a deeper way. The intellect gets to their essence, what they are. In your example, by seeing what the essence of the circle is, I then understand all types of circles.
Right, and notice I really do see things with the intellect. For example, it is the simple things like substance and properties that we see that are then the starting points for all of our understanding.
What else is different about intellectual knowledge?
Well, intellectual knowledge is, the ideas are totally immaterial. Remember, we said that all knowledge has this on topedness, that the knower becomes the known. That is, the person knowing and the thing known are in the same place at the same time in a way. They are on top of each other. But in the case of sense knowledge, it is still somewhat tied to material things, to things that have parts outside of each other.
Can you illustrate this?
Yes, on the screen, we see a conversation about justice. So Adele, how long is justice?
Forever.
And how much does it weigh? Well, okay, how wide is it? Okay, how about this? Can you tell me what justice is?
No.
Okay. Well, take this example. Suppose your little brother came in your room and took one of your toys without telling you. Would that be fair? Would that be justice?
No.
No. It would be justice if he asked you, right? So justice is like that. Now, can you see justice?
No.
What else? What other kind of things can't you see?
Your soul.
Right. Remember when we were talking before, you said God and angels. Those are all things you can't see, right? So maybe justice has to do with one of those things. Which one of those things would you think it has to do with?
God.
Partly God, but when it's your brother, not necessarily God directly when it's your brother and you, right? So it would be what? You and your brother both have what? You have souls, right? And so that's an invisible thing like your soul, right? So you have you ever seen Justice going out for a walk? Right? Because you don't see a soul going out for a walk or an angel going out for a walk, right? Because that's in something invisible. It's having to do with the way your mind and your will is, right? What you desire, whether it's right, and what you do, whether it's right. And that all comes from your intention, right? Very good. We see that justice has no height, no width, or color. All of its parts, if we can call them parts, are together at a point. By contrast, a key aspect of material things is that they can change, as we said. And they can change because they have parts outside of each other. So a cat can be killed because its paw is here and its head there. A house can be built because the substances out of which it is made are A, in different places, and B, can be moved together next to one another. Water can be made because hydrogen is here and oxygen is there, and they can be brought together so that they may interact.
Well, since matter has parts outside of each other, it can be changed.
And right, and ideas cannot be taken apart. Two is two and has no tendency to become three. On the screen, we have a discussion that took place between my children at our dinner table, which we now reenact.
So you see, when things rotate, that's what's called angular. What did you say?
Bespeaks.
I can't understand you. What did,
Bespeaks.
I can't understand what you're saying. Can you point to what you...
She wants to be excused, and you can't point to being excused.
Yes, that's right. Being excused means Daddy has given permission, and that's in his intent, in his mind, and it's not seeable or touchable at all.
This is really invisible. Nobody can see it.
That's right. Not even God could see it because it's not something that's seeable in itself.
Notice that you cannot point at being excused because it is in the mind, and the mind is immaterial.
I better explain that.
Okay. It must be immaterial because ideas have no parts and matter does. Something without parts cannot be something with parts. Also, ideas are general and material things are particular. If the idea were material, it would be particular. It would be this circle of this size and this color and this hardness, which it is not.
Is this then the key to the proof of the existence and nature of the human soul as immaterial?
Yes, because my ability to know intellectually is a power of me at the core. Now, if this core of me was material, any power it would have to be material, and hence we wouldn't have general ideas, but we do. Hence the soul must be not material, which we say as immaterial, which we also call spiritual.
Is this also, therefore, what leads us to see that the soul is immortal?
Yes, this actually leads us to a proof of the immortality of the soul. The soul, as we've seen, has no parts one outside of the other because it's non-material. Since there are no parts, there is no way to rip it apart. It's whatever it is and cannot be other than it is. This is in contrast, as we said, to material things. I can, for example, destroy this piece of paper by ripping it up because it has parts, one over here and one over there. And I can separate the parts. And I can take this part away from that part. And that's the nature of all material things.
On the screen, we have a discussion with some children that should help us understand man's nature.
So what are you made out of?
Bones and tiny little particles.
Is that all you're made out of?
Yes.
Then how do men think if that's all you are?
You have a mind.
But you said you're just a bunch of little tiny